So my name is Beth Billings and I'm from Around the Table Yarns. And today we are going to be doing the October hat from Sloan Rosenthal, who's designed this hat as part of the original Year of Hats from Kelbourne Woolens. The Year of Hats patterns are all made out of Germantown worsted yarn, which is a made in America wool, and it comes in lots of great colors, and it's a warm and durable wool, and we like it a lot. So I'm just going to go through. This is a free pattern on Ravelry.com called the October hat. And I'm just going to go through some of the information about it. Let's see if I can get it a little more in focus. More light on it. Here we go. Okay. So it calls for, they did it in blue, so it calls for one skein of the Germantown worsted. There is a cable repeat, and in that 40 stitches, it should be 5.5 inches across on your larger needles after blocking. 28 rounds equals 4 inches height of knitting of work in this after blocking. So we're going to be working with size US 5 circular needles in a 16-inch, also size US 7, and then to finish the hat, we'll change to the 7s in a double point. Other notions they call for is the darning needle, the stitch marker, Kelbourne Woolens label, which is optional, sewing thread, sharp sewing needle, waste yarn, crochet hook for the provisional cast on. So we do need the waste yarn and the crochet hook for our provisional cast on, and I'll be demonstrating that in a second. So if made to the correct size, the unstretched circumference around the brim is 18 inches, and then stretched, it should fit a 21 to 22 inch around head. The height is 9.5 inches with the brim folded in half. So it's a little bit longer if the brim is down. So we're specifically going to be looking at the tubular cast on, and then switching the tubular cast on from knit 1, purl 1 to knit 2, purl 2. Then we're going to look at the cables and working on cables from charts. And then we'll talk about decreasing at the top of the hat. So the pattern describes that this hat is worked in the round from the bottom up, beginning with a provisional cast on, then a deep knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, and then an intricate modern cable panel pattern is worked for the body of the hat with integrated decreases shaping the crown. They do give you an option for not working the tubular cast on, but why would we do that? That's crazy. We're going to do the tubular cast on. If you choose not to do the tubular cast on, you can work a different cast on, like a long tail, and then just go straight into the brim. And you would start with a different total number of stitches. You would start with what we end up with, which is 120. So again, that information is in the pattern. And then the only abbreviations that you really need to pay attention to are the C2-/2L, which is a cable 22 to the left and a cable 22 to the right. So C22L and a C22R. And that is simply slipping 2 stitches to a cable needle and either holding them to the front for the left or the back for the right. So remember, you'll be right back. And then you knit the 2, and then the next 2 stitches, and then you knit the 2 from the cable needle. So that is some of the background information. And now we're going to, here's the hat again up close. So you can see the tubular cast on creates a very elastic edge. And you can see that edge in the photograph here. And then that goes into a knit 2, purl 2 rib, which is a really elastic kind of a ribbing. I don't think there's anything on the back of that page. So the directions are on page 3, and on the back of page 3, on 4 are the charts. Yeah, this seems too close. So does everybody have a copy of the pattern? All right. Fabulous. So I'm going to go to the chart in a second, but first we're going to start with the cast on, and I'm going to work through the cast on with less than the total number of stitches, just so that we can demonstrate the techniques that we need. So the first thing is they want us to use waste yarn. So here's my waste yarn, a crochet hook, and our needle. And they're starting with the smaller needle. And I'm just doing this on a double point as an illustration, because the first 4 rows, you don't actually join into the round. You're just going to work them back and forth. And so there's no need for me to demonstrate this on a circular needle. And my circular needle is ready for me to show you the next step. So the first thing we're going to do is make a slip knot. So leaving a short tail of a few inches, make a loop, and then draw the working yarn from behind through that loop and put it on your crochet hook, snugging it. Now I'm going to hold my crochet hook parallel to my knitting needle, bring my yarn around, oop, not the tail, bring my yarn around like so, and draw that through the slip knot that's on the crochet hook, and that makes 1 stitch. So you draw around, so you wrap around both the needle and the crochet hook, and then you draw it through. Oh. And you try not to have it go either off camera or off the needle. We're very close today. If that's what we want. All right, keep going. So the needle and the hook are parallel. You draw the yarn over and then pull it through the loop. Wrap around and pull it through the loop. And you're going to do that until you have 61 stitches totaled. Nine. So I'm going to do it until I have 11, which is a nice round number. So when you'll have 61 stitches, and I leave the loop at one end so I know where to pull when I want to take out my provisional stitches. You can secure that a little bit more if you want to. You could tie a little bow kind of a thing here, but we're not really going to touch the provisional yarn again, so it doesn't really need to do anything. So these stitches, eventually you can pull the tail and pull out the provisional cast on. And so that's the reason for it, is to have a way to remove the first row of stitches. That's the point of doing a provisional cast on. Okay, so let me just get the other needle. Some yarn. So I'll work with the pale blue yarn so you can see what I'm doing easily. So now we're going to move to row 1. So I've done my cast on, and of 61 stitches, I'm not joining in the round, and I'm switching to the working yarn. So I'm going to move to a different yarn, and I'm going to start with row 1, and it's a right side row. So I'm going to knit 1, I'm going to yarn over, and then repeat that from the beginning to the last stitch. I did cast on an odd number of stitches, so there will be 1 stitch remaining after you do these pairs of knit 1 and yarn over, 1 stitch remaining, and then you'll knit that stitch, and that will just about double the number. Okay, so I'm going to knit the first stitch with my working yarn. So all you have to do to join the working yarn is pinch it with your finger. I pinch it here behind and wrap it, but if you hold your yarn a different way, you may just want to make a loop like that and wrap it around and hold both the working yarn and the tail. And we're going to just do that. So I'll drop my tail, taking my working yarn, I'm going to make a yarn over. So a yarn over is very simply when it's between two knit stitches, you just bring the yarn forward as if you were going to purl, and then you knit the next stitch. So that stitch has nothing below it. So it's a knit stitch, a yarn over, a knit stitch. Then bring the yarn forward as if to purl and knit the next stitch. Yarn forward as if to purl, knit the next stitch, and continue bringing the yarn forward as if to purl and knitting the next stitch until you get to the end of the 61 stitches. When that happens, you'll have you'll doubled plus 1, the number of stitches, kind of, or minus 1, the number of stitches. So I started with 10, and now I have 20 here, and now I work the last stitch, that makes 21. Clear so far?
I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble with the tubular cast on.
You're not on so the tubular cast on is what we're doing now. Are you having trouble with the crochet cast on?
And yeah, sorry, the crochet cast on.
Are you trying to do it at the same time?
No, I didn't quite see very well what you were doing in the beginning. If you could just show it one more time.
Well, it's being videoed, so you'll be able
no problem.
to go back and see it on the video. But
sounds good.
Just to remind you that you're going to hold the needle and the crochet hook parallel, and there's going to be a stitch on the crochet hook. So you'll wrap underneath and around both the needle and the crochet hook, and you'll pull that through the stitch that's on the crochet hook, and that puts the stitch on the knitting needle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. And that's saved for posterity.
Okay, I'll watch it later.
In the Zoom video, so that you'll be able to go onto the website and see it as many times as you want.
Okay.
So when you've completed the provisional cast on, these stitches are just a way of holding the new stitches that we're making for the tubular cast on. So the tubular cast on makes a little bit of hollowed fabric or double-faced fabric. So the first row is this knit one yarn over. The second row, this is all worked now in the working yarn, not in the provisional yarn. And it says here, slip one with yarn in front, knit one, and then you repeat that from the asterisk onwards. So slip one with yarn in front, knit one, slip one with yarn in front, knit one, all the way to the very last stitch. And that stitch will be slipped with yarn in front. So here we go. The yarn is in front because we just knitted that stitch, but then I need to move it between the needles, and I'm going to be knitting one into one of the yarn overs. Then I move the yarn back because it needs to be in the front when I slip the stitch, and note that I am slipping the stitch purlwise. You always slip purlwise unless the pattern says differently. And then I slip the yarn in front, back to the other side, I knit the next stitch. Now the yarn comes back between the needles. I slip the next stitch, which was a knit stitch, purlwise. The yarn goes back between the needles to the front, and I knit the yarn over. Yarn to the front. Slip the stitch as though to purl. Yarn to the back, knit the next stitch. So the rhythm of this is very similar to ribbing. Yarn to the front, slip the stitch purlwise, yarn to the back, knit the yarn over. Yarn to the front, slip the knitted stitch purlwise, yarn to the back, knit the yarn over. So I'm saying the knitted stitch, it looks like a purl stitch from this side, but that was the one that we knitted on the other side. And we're working into the yarn over this time. So it should look like that, a loose yarn over. There's no base to it. It's not connected to the provisional cast on. And yarn to the front, slip one, yarn to the back, knit the yarn over to the very last stitches, yarn to the front, slip one, yarn to the back, knit one into the yarn over. Here's my last stitch. It could be a little loose. That's okay. You can give it a little bit of a tug to tighten it. And then for the last stitch, you'll bring the yarn forward as if to purl, slip the stitch purlwise from the left needle to the right needle, and just leave your yarn there. That's all you need to do. Okay, so this stitch does not get worked, it only gets slipped. Then we will turn. Okay, you can give everything a little tug to get it nice and smooth. We'll now start row 3, and row 3 is knit one, slip one with yarn in front, and repeat. And you do that to the very last stitch, which is knitted. So here we go. I hold my tails out of my way, go into the stitch knitwise, knit one, and then again, bring the yarn to the front to slip one purlwise, yarn to the back to knit one. So it's this, that's my dog. His favorite person is home, her favorite person is home. Hold on one second. Sorry, my husband came home and disrupted the sleeping dogs. Okay, so we're back on row 3, and this is very similar to row 2 in the process of what we're doing, but it started with a knit one instead of a slip one. So again, we're to do the slip one, we bring the yarn forward, slip it purlwise, take the yarn back, knit one. And we keep doing that to the end of the row. This time we'll have started and ended with a knit stitch. So I'm going to get to the end. And I'm going to do a knit stitch instead of a slip stitch. So that's the difference between rows 2 and 3. But otherwise it's the same. It almost feels like doing a knit one, purl one, rib, but you're only knitting. So only the knit stitches are actually being worked. So here's my last pair. I've slipped the second to last stitch purlwise with my yarn in front. I move the yarn to the back and I knit the last stitch without splitting the yarn. There we go. Now have a look at the work so far. There's almost it almost looks like stockinette fabric on this side. And if I flip it over, it's very similar on the back side, but it looks a little bit more like purled fabric on the back side. So this is very much in keeping with the tubular cast on. You're sort of making a little space of fabric that splits out from itself. So if these would be the stitches, they sort of split from themselves. And it makes almost like a casing on the edge of the hat. So now what I'm going to do is row 4, and it's the same again as row 2. So this is the last time. So you'll notice we've sort of done a row of each on the right side and the wrong side, sort of, because the first row on the right side was knit one, yarn over, but we've done this slip one, knit one row alternating between slip one, knit one, and knit one, slip one, 1, 2, 3 more times. So here we're going to finish the last repeat of this, slip one first with the yarn in front, and then move it to knit, bring the yarn back, slip one, knit one, yarn forward and slip, yarn back and knit across the whole row. until we get to the last stitches. And that completes the setup of your tubular edge. You can go forward in this pattern. Here's my, I just need to tug on my tail a little bit. It's grown a little. So here's the last stitch again, is yarn forward as if to purl, slip the stitch purlwise, and then just leave it. You don't need to do anything else. That will hold, that will be exactly what you need. So let me just demonstrate the edge that you've created. I'm going to pull away my provisional stitches. So I'm undoing my crocheted provisional stitches, and sometimes they come out really easily. Today is one of those days. And you can see that now that provisional cast on row of stitches has become just a single strand of yarn in a tube. So there's a tube on the edge, and I'm just going to pull it right out, leave that tube empty, and that becomes the edge of my hat. And it's a very stretchy edge, and it's actually a handmade copy of what happens on the edging of machine-made socks or hats. So this rounded sort of appearance to the edge looks like what you see on machine-made knit, like cuffs, socks, hats, that kind of thing. All right, so now we've come to the rearranged stitches for the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. This is row 5, and you can do this a couple of ways. So I'm going to demonstrate it both ways. Here's a cable hook, and I have my cable hook because one of the ways to do this is to move the stitches with the cable needle. So if I were going to do that, I would put my first stitch, so I'm going to just read it, knit 1, then you slip one to the cable needle, hold that to the back, knit the next stitch, purl the stitch from the cable needle, purl the next stitch, and then repeat. So for every 4 stitches, you will do this sequence, and you can use a cable needle. So you knit 1, and then pinching those together, you slip a stitch to the cable needle. I use the short end of my J hook and roll that stitch off and leave it to the back. Then I knit the next stitch, bring my cable hook up. Oop. Hello. I twisted it. Okay, so I rolled that way. So then when I knit it off of the long end. Sorry, I'm gonna purl it off of the long end. So I just find this a little extra. So I have to bring I have 3 needles in play. I have to bring my yarn forward to purl, and then I purl off of the cable needle. And then I get the cable needle out of there and I purl the next stitch. So I've changed this knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, which is what we had originally, to 2 knits and 2 purls. And that's what they want us to do. So I am a great believer in taking an opportunity to try something to make it easier. And sometimes that works better and sometimes it doesn't. So again, if we were going to do this with the cable needle, we would knit the first stitch. We would slip the second stitch to a cable needle and hold it to the back. We would knit the next stitch. You could slip that stitch back to the left needle, purl it, and then purl the last stitch, like so. So here's an alternative. Knit the first stitch. put your right needle tip into the next knit stitch as though you were going to knit it. So front to back, under the left hand needle, exactly as though you were going to knit it, and pop both stitches off the left needle, and then put your left needle immediately back into the purl stitch. Now I can put my left needle into the front leg of the stitch on the right needle and knit it around the back. Bring my yarn forward and purl 2. So it's a little less fussy, a little less fiddly. I can show you that again. Yarn to the back and knit the first stitch, then put my right needle into the second stitch from the end knitwise, just as though I were going to knit it, and just slide both that stitch, and you could even put your finger right there, slide those 2 stitches off, and then move your left needle under the right needle to pick up that purl stitch. Now you can put the left needle point into the front leg of the stitch on the right needle, wrap around the right needle, and make your knit stitch. And now bring the yarn forward and purl 2. Yarn to the back, knit the first stitch, put the needle into the second stitch knitwise. You can put your finger up here if you want to, and move the stitch over, put your left needle into the front of that stitch and knit it. Yarn to the front and purl the next 2. And the last stitch is a knit. And that is how you take the edging from a knit 1 purl 1 to a knit 2 purl 2. Then in the pattern it says to continue working in knit 2 purl 2 ribbing until the piece measures 5 inches from the cast on edge. So that would be a substantial amount of knitting, and we're not going to go through all of that. Oh, sorry, I tell a lie. You'll have done this. We've rearranged this. I jumped ahead. So we've rearranged the stitches, and now you are ready to join the work in the round. I'm sorry that I can't seem to get this in focus. That's a little bit better. So we're gonna, sorry. So we've rearranged the stitches here. And now we're gonna join for working in the round. And of course, I just demonstrated that on my sample, and I still have to go to the end of my the hat that I'm actually making. So I'm just going to pause for a second, and then I'll show you how to do. I'm going to finish this round. So when you get to the end of the row of rearranging the stitches, the last one will be 1 stitch remaining, and you're going to slip that 1 stitch with the yarn in front. So as you can see, I did this on my circular needles. This is the sample I was working on earlier, and I got it to this stage of having finished the tubular cast on, bind on. And now what I have are all of my stitches onto a 16-inch needle. They will stretch out from tip to tip of the needle. And they tell you to join for working in the round, being careful not to twist the stitches. So it feels fairly compact to me, and with the provisional cast on still in place here, it is kind of compact. What you want to do is have your working yarn in your right hand. So your working yarn should be on the right. And in the left hand, with no twists in the cable. So even though that's flipping up, there's no twist in my cable. And the left hand should be the first stitch that we cast on. Okay. So they tell you to slip from the right hand needle, the first stitch, to the left hand needle. And now I'm going to knit that stitch together. Sorry, I'm going to place a marker. Conveniently located. So I'm going to place a marker to mark my new beginning of the round, and I'm going to knit that first stitch together with the one from the left hand needle. And now I'm joined in the round. Okay, they're not completely joined here. They're just joined by one stitch at the needle, and that's okay. That's where we are right now. When we finish the ribbing, we can use our tail to sew over to the other side to close that gap. Okay. So now we're going to continue working the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing around. So I'm going to continue around, and then I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so when I've come to the end of the round, I'm just working one stitch past the end of the round, and we're going to just demonstrate taking out the provisional stitches from the whole hat, not just the sample that I had. So if you do this fairly early, you should be able to pick out the stitches without too much trouble. And you're just pulling. They get a little sticky sometimes, and if they get sticky, you can just unstick them. You could use a crochet hook or a knitting needle to make sure that they don't catch on each other. If you use a smoother cotton yarn, that can prevent some of this. You can also help by pulling like that, and that can help pull your yarn out. So if you're having trouble getting these to unzip, just pull them apart and then pull on the provisional yarn. Pull them apart all the way to the end even. Because you're not disfiguring or doing anything wrong to the edge when you do this. Although do watch out that you don't lose any stitches like I just did. I was in the right place. Oops. Okay. So sometimes it's helpful if you pull your needle tips out a little bit further. So here I've sort of disrupted all of that provisional yarn, and then I'm just going to simply pull gently to get it to come out. And it should just come out. If it doesn't, you could pull a little bit of it out and cut it and pull it out that way. It can come out in pieces. You don't have to save this waste yarn unless you feel very fond of it. So that's how we get it out. And it leaves an edge that looks rounded, as you can see. Adjusting my focus because this yarn is darker. I want you to be able to see, so that's better. Need no shadows on it. Ooh, too much. Okay. Now, here we are at the beginning of our round. Here's the marker. Here's my tail. That's what we're going to use to sew. And what we want to do is create an edge that joins here that looks smooth. It doesn't have to be a perfect join, but we're going to mirror the steps of the mattress stitch to make it. So I'm grabbing a dull tapestry needle or darning needle. I don't want to use something that's too sharp. So I have a dull tipped needle and I'm going to thread my tail onto the needle. And I'm going to look at where I want to join. So I want to join across this seam. So I'm going to turn it away from me. And I'm actually going to turn it to the other side because that's where my yarn is coming out of. So let's go to where the yarn is coming out of the bottom of the stitch. They're joined up here, so we really only need to bring it together right here. This, you can sort of see there's like a little V-shaped divot between the two stitches, and that's what we want to bring together. So I'm going to go, this is my working yarn out of the way. I'm going to cross over from where this is coming out of the bottom and go into a horizontal. So I think of this, the vertical as being the stitches that are going from the bottom up to the top, the row of stitches going from the bottom up to the top. And what I want to do is go into something that's crossing that line. So as low down as I can. So I'm going to go into a horizontal bar under that first stitch. And I'm just pulling it together. So I'm going to do that again. Pull that stitch out again. So you can really see it. So I'm looking for, like this is probably one of the slip stitches. Remember we slipped with the yarn in front. So I'm looking for that. And I'm going to just take my yarn from where it's coming out of on the other edge under that slip stitch. Being careful not to catch it on the tip of my needle. So here it's coming from here over here and out under this thing. And then I'm going to go put it back in where it came out of. And that should close it up. You don't want lots of yarn there. You don't want a bulky join. The yarn will be joined in the round at this point. So you don't need to do a lot to keep those two edges together. And now if you wanted to, you could bury that tail in the tube of the tubular cast on, just like that. And because it's the same color, nobody will see it. How's that? So there's a little bit of a line here. There's a little bit of a horizontal line there, but if that's on the inside of the hat, it's not going to be noticeable. Okay. So now we've got our work in the round. Hold on, I want to keep my working yarn from getting caught. Sorry, this is my marker. This is the beginning of my round. So I've already worked this stitch. It just got over to the other side. So when you put down and pick up your hat, remember to always pick up your working yarn in your right hand so that it's connected to the last stitch that you worked. So here's my working yarn. It was connected to this stitch. This stitch had gotten moved over there when I was picking up stitches. So I've just moved it back to the right needle since it's already been worked. All right, so now we're going to pretend that we've done all 5 inches of knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, and we're going to move on to reading the chart and look at that in more depth, okay? So you would work the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing for 5 inches, and then we would change to our larger needles. And if you haven't done that before, it's a very simple process. To change needles just means to start working onto the other needle. I'm not sure if this is my 7. It is. So you would just start working onto your new needle. So again, I'm pretending that I have finished this, and I'm just going to start working from my next size up needle. And then it tells me that's all you have to do. You can just pull this needle away, and you're just going to work all of the stitches onto this new needle. And you can pull that sort of out of your way. But I don't want to do it not be in chart. So then it says begin working from the chart, working rounds 1 through 18 of the cable chart once, and then rounds 11 through 18 3 times more. So let's go to our chart. So what you can see is that rounds 1 through 10 are a setup with the ribbing integrated into it. Do you see that? If the purl stitches are marked by these gray squares, then you can see it's purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 across the whole section. And those ribs end in 2 rows or 6 rows, or they don't end. So there's a little bit of a pattern of integrating the ribbing stitches in. So I just want you to pay attention to that. That's what's happening in rows 1 through 10 here. Okay, so the repeat of the pattern is just rows 11 through 18. So you'll do 1 through 18, and then you'll come back and do this 3 more times. So 1 through 18 to start with, and then you'll do 11 through 18 3 more times. Notice that the chart has numbers only on the right-hand side. And the reason for that is you're reading the chart from the right-hand side to the left. And then when you finish this section of stitches, you'll start the chart again here at number 1. So if there were this is however many stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 6, 8, 32, 4, 6, 8, 40. So this is 40 stitches. We have 120. So we have 3 sections of 40 stitches each. Okay, so when you finish the first 40 stitches, you'll just do this chart again. You'll start over here. And when you finish that, you'll come back and do it one more time. So you could place a marker. We have one at the beginning of the round, and then we could place one after we finish the chart the first time and after we finish the chart the second time. So then you would start working. And one of the things that I think is really important to do is to identify your cables so that they're easy to read and see. And the way that I do that is by using highlighters. So this chart key tells you that the left leaning cable looks like that. So if you go up on the chart and you find all of those places, you can highlight them. And you won't be confused when you come to them, whether they're left leaning or right leaning. I find that the black and white graphic of a chart can be really dizzying or confusing when you start reading it. So see, we've got all of the ones that I've marked in yellow green are all going to the left. There's an orange marker, and all of the ones going to the right can be highlighted with the orange. And I really feel like this helps to keep you on the straight and narrow on your chart, because it sort of makes the things that need to stand out to you stand out. And then you can see other things about it, like there's only 2 crosses and 2 crosses in these cables, and there's 4 crosses and 4 crosses and 4 crosses and 4 crosses in these cables. So the pattern again looks like that, but the way that you do it is with these sets of cables. So let's try it. So let's imagine that we've worked the first 2 rounds of this ribbing, and we're starting on row 3. So row 3 starts with, let's go backwards. Let me go back to the beginning of row 3 since it starts right at the beginning. All right. So to do a left cross, you're going to slip the cable needle into the first 2 stitches as though to purl, and you're going to hold them to the front. And I let them rest on the U. And then you're going to knit the next 2 stitches. And then I roll the stitches onto the pointy end of my cable needle and knit them off of that. Oh. Not getting a good tension on there. There we go. So I've essentially taken those 2 stitches and crossed the right ones over from the right side across the front, and that makes the left leaning cable. All right, now I have a knit 2 after that, and a purl 2, and a knit 2, and another cable. This time the cable is right leaning. So this time the 2 knit stitches are going to lean over the 2 purl stitches, and all of them will be knitted. So again, I take my cable needle and I hook the first 2 stitches And this time, because I'm leaning to the right, I go to the back. I knit the next 2 stitches from the left needle. And then another way that you can do it, instead of working off the tip of your cable needle, you can just replace the 2 stitches onto your left needle and then go ahead and knit them. So that takes me to the end of here. Now I have 2 purls. And then I do another left cross. So I find it's really helpful to have those highlighted because then I know, okay, I'm there, I'm ready, I'm doing that thing right now. Oh, that's I'm like, what is that? That's the end. I just didn't have scissors out. Okay, so slip the next 2 stitches onto the cable needle. The left cross is in the front. Knit the next 2 stitches. And then again, you can either turn the cable needle and work off of the long end, or you can just replace the stitches back onto the left needle. I sometimes find that easier to do. And then you're going to knit those stitches. So you can see here's a left cross and a right cross and another left cross. Now we work across ribbing several times. So I'm back onto a knit 2. Purl 2. Knit 2. Purl 2. That's 8 stitches. The next 2 are knitted. That's 10. The next 2 are purled. That's 12. 13, 14 are knit. And now I'm going to do another right cross. So I've worked across these 14 stitches, and now I'm going to do another right cross. So from the beginning of this round, I've worked all of these stitches across to here. I'm going to slip the next 2 stitches to my cable needle. Hold them at the back because it's a right cross, so you'll be right back. Knit 2. I'm going to keep slipping these back to my left needle. That just feels much easier to me today. And then I'm going to knit them off in order. And then my final 2 stitches of this section are purled. Now you can place a marker at this point, and that will indicate that you've gotten to the end of your section. And so I find it's really helpful to have markers in between pattern repeats so that I can keep track of what I have done and what I haven't done. It just makes it much easier to get into a pattern if I keep the markers going. Another thing that I like to do is I like to cover my pattern so that I can see what I have done already, like that, or highlight it with highlighter tape. So that can make it a little easier to read the topmost line. So then I would move this up and I would see that in my next section, my next round after this, that it's all knitted and purled, but no longer in just the ribbing. So it's knit 6, purl 2, knit 6, purl 2, knit 6, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 6, purl 2. So it's becoming a more intricate pattern. So do you have any questions about reading the chart? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we're looking now at the decreases for the crown. And what happens when you get to the top of the chart, your piece should measure 11 inches from the beginning. If it doesn't and you want it to be longer, you could continue the chart a whole nother repeat or a partial repeat. So it's only 10 rows that you're repeating, or 8 rows, sorry, not even 10 rows, 2, 4, 6, 8 rows. So you could go, if you wanted another inch, if it seemed like your hat was short, you could do another inch. Also, if it seemed like your hat was long, you could omit one of those repeats. So then what's going to happen is the top of the hat will be ribbed and not cabled, I believe. I'm just checking quickly. There's no cable stitches in the crown. So it's just going to be a complicated rib and not cabling. And that makes it pretty straightforward to do. And then the 2 stitches that are being used are the SSK and the knit 2 together. Trying to find a little focus here. Maybe closer. Yes, closer works better. Okay. So we have previously divided our hat into 40 stitch sections. And now we've got 1, 2, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, 18, 24, 26, 28, 36, 8, 40. So this whole repeat, the SSK all the way through to the purl 2 is 40 stitches. And in that 40 stitches, you will be decreasing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So in each section of 40 stitches, you will be subtracting 6 stitches. That's a total decrease of 18 stitches. Yes, yes. 6, 6, and 6 is 18. And so that will leave you with 102 stitches from your original 120. Round 2, there are decreases as well. So it's a rapid decrease of the crown. And again, it's an SSK, knit 3, purl 2. So you can see the knit sections next to the decreases are being affected. Purl 2 stays the same, knit 3 instead of knit 4, purl 2 together and across. So again, this is going to be that same markered section. It was 40 stitches, now it's 34 stitches. And so this asterisk to the purl 2 represents those 36 stitches. And again, you're going to be decreasing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So you'll be down another 6 stitches from 34 down to 28. And again in round 3, and again in round 4. And then in round 5, you're going to knit 2 and purl 2 together around, knit 1 and SSK around in round 6, and knit 2 together all the way around in round 7. So you go from 120 stitches to 12 in just 7 rounds. So it's going to go whoosh right into the center. And then when you get to the end, you'll have those 12 stitches on your needle, and you'll break your yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, 8 inches, and putting it onto a tapestry needle like we did before. You'll just draw the needle through all 12 of the stitches and pull it closed and weave in the ends. So that is the whole of the October hat. And I hope that that's helpful. Do you have any questions? Nope. Well, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy your hat and you see it on Instagram or Facebook or something soon. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.